All right, here
And
we
we're
are.
live. Yes. Good to see you, John. How are you?
Likewise, okay, just getting ready for a bit of a road trip as soon as we're done here, but glad we can fit this in for our
Yep.
Mother's Day special.
Yeah, we'll be
Um,
going live on Mother's Day.
yeah,
We're recording this a couple days early, but yeah, we'll be on Mother's Day. That's great.
so uh, yeah, I was, there's so many interesting mothers and
Oh,
stories of mothers, and
mm-hmm.
so both the Buddha's birth mom and his foster mom,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course his wife, who was the mother of his child. And then the other kind of tragic mothers that enter the
Mm-hmm.
picture. And yeah, and I mean, considering how patriarchal, things are in general, especially, in that period, but even now to some degree, these women play significant roles in many ways. Um, and, I just thought it'd be worth talking about.
Sure.
Um,
And I mean,
somewhat,
there's a difference really in and I think the Buddha's teaching to lay people as versus his teaching to people who are sort of more advanced, along the path or monastics, quite different kinds of focuses when it comes to family in general, I would say. So motherhood in particular.
yeah. And so many, I mean, almost all the women in his life became nuns, became part of his sangha.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
his foster mother, his wife. I think probably a few others that I'm not clear on. But then there's the tragic story of his mother, his birth mother.
Right.
I mean, these are all stories, so we don't really know what happened. I don't know how, it's a breached birth, clearly, but which probably isn't was certainly not unusual in those days. And
Mm.
when you sort of hear about the pain of being a birth mom back then, when there's no anesthesia, and that plays its role in some of the later stories too. But I'm curious to know sort of who your favorites are, or who you're like in terms of the stories, and what strikes you.
Well, I mean, I think what strikes me is the sort of inner conflict a lot of the time within various different stories about families, motherhood in general. I mean, there's on the one hand, there's a lot of praise of motherhood and of family life in general that the Buddha gives to lay people to his lay audiences in general. How uh, mothers should be supported by their husbands and by their children and so on and so forth. Um, on the other hand, there are a number of interesting suttas where the Buddha talks about very bluntly about the downsides of affection, of certain kinds of, in fact, particularly maternal affection to mothers. There's one where a mother has lost her granddaughter or I think it was a granddaughter or grandson, I don't remember, and uh, and she's mourning this loss. And the Buddha says, wouldn't you like to have as many grandchildren as there are people in Savatthi? And the woman says, of course. And then the Buddha says, how many people a day die in Savatthi? And she says, well, probably between 1 and 10. And he says, well, if that were the case, you would be mourning your grandchildren's lives every day of your life. And that's a kind of that's a bracing kind of interpretation of, how affection can lead to dukkha.
Sure. Well,
Um,
that's the mustard seed
and the mustard
sutta.
seed, of
Yeah,
course.
that's
Yep,
the
the mustard seed,
famous
of
one.
course. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the
and
mustard seed is from the commentaries. This is actually in a
oh, the
sutta
mustard seed is
itself.
from the commentaries. Okay,
Hmm.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, uh, that's so. Yeah, and then there's the story of uh, uh, Patichara, which is similar to mustard seed, I suppose. Although she doesn't have to go around. I mean, that the again, this is probably from the commentaries. The woman who lost both of her children, one while trying to get them across the flooded river,
Mm.
and So, one child misinterprets something and jumps in the river and, floats away. The other one is carried away by a hawk. And
Mm,
she's so grief stricken that she goes home. I mean, this is a hard one to believe, right? She goes home to her parents, her family, and the home was struck by lightning the night before and burned down
right.
with all the family in it.
Mm,
So she goes crazy, um, and is half naked wandering around the town, and somehow comes in the Buddha's presence, and just his presence, like, breaks the spell of her craziness, and then she, of
mm,
course, becomes a nun. So there's that. I mean, just so that's in at least as I read it, a story of the Buddha's presence and how just being in the presence of someone like that when you're going crazy is enough to kind of,
center you, sort of. Yeah.
yeah, and
Hmm.
that's certainly true. And in the case of Mahakasapa, I mean, that kid, sorry, not Mahakasapa, um, uh, Kisagotami, yeah. I mean,
Mm,
that's again where, somebody's so, concerned about her wanting to have her dead son, brought back to life.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so then, the fact that and then of course there's, the line from the Metta Sutta,
Of course. Yeah.
which
Mm-hmm.
is sort
Mm-hmm.
of significant, very significant. I mean, just that image alone. Um, but what's interesting also is like, um, in terms of
We should probably say the line from the Metta Sutta for people who might not,
yeah, uh,
that you should
like
love
you
one
should
another.
love.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's compare the love that one should have for all sentient beings is the kind of love that a mother should have for an only child.
Right.
That's the kind of
She
idea.
would protect her child, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
protective love.
Yeah.
Um, um, but
On,
I
on
go ahead.
I was going to say, on the other hand, there's also another early sutta, or actually, no, I don't know if it's early sutta or if it's just a sutta in the Pali tradition. I don't remember exactly, but in any event, a sutta where a woman talks about something incredible and amazing about herself. Uh, and this is kind of an echo, distant echo of there's a very famous sutta where the Buddha said, where the Buddha talks about with an Ananda about all of his incredible, or Ananda talks about all the Buddha's incredible and amazing qualities. So in this sutta, a woman is talking about her incredible and amazing quality. And one of the, or I think the sort of most important, incredible, and amazing quality is that she says that she had a son who she dearly loved, who was arrested and executed by the state. And she said that her incredible and amazing quality was that she did not suffer during his death, that she did not mourn it. Um, and that's another one of these, which is, I
That,
mean,
yeah, that's a little.
well, I mean, that
Yeah.
is the, I mean, isn't that what it is that I mean,
Well, yes, that's an interesting one, right? Because
yeah,
there's a difference between being so attached that no matter, uh, uh, so you're so there's a difference between being detached and therefore not feeling anything
mm-hmm,
versus feeling what you feel when somebody close to you dies, but not holding on to that feeling forever, or
right,
not, getting stuck there. Um, but that doesn't mean there isn't something missing from your life.
mm-hmm,
And just kind of recognizing that difference, I think, is really key.
mm-hmm,
Um, and yeah, I was also just on a side, just part of me is also like the story of the mother, the birth Queen Maya
mm,
dying at childbirth. Because, I'm sort of like, and you would, I don't know anything like any connection at all, but you might, whether that relationship between the Buddha and his mother, his birth mother, but also his foster mother, how does it relate to, the Virgin Mary and Jesus?
uh,
That kind of,
indirect, very
yeah,
indirect. I mean,
yeah,
I think there's a similar, there, there's a kind of process that some historians call creeping docetism in religions, where docetism is sort of the view that the founder of the religion becomes deified over time,
Right.
and in the same way that the earliest stories about Jesus had nothing to do with the virgin birth is very much in the later strains of Christianity, Christian writing.
Right.
And in the same way, a lot of the sort of stories that tend to deify his mother tend to be a little bit later, probably.
Right.
And his mother in the early texts is really almost never mentioned there, except really in
True.
that sutta about the incredible and amazing qualities, which is where Ananda is talking about the Buddha and mentions his mother's death, and how I think something like every Tathagata their mother has to die or something like that. I don't remember exactly how it goes. But I think that's pretty much the only mention, and that sutta is very much on the sort of mythic end of things as far as suttas go, because that's the sutta where the Buddha is supposedly, after his birth, gets up, walks 7 steps, and says, "I am the greatest. This will be my final birth,"
Yeah.
and so on. So it's
Yeah.
it's pretty clearly a mythic register.
Kind of amazing what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, his mother's mentioned very little in the suttas.
Yeah. It's interesting that she comes in later. I mean,
Yeah.
in these later texts. And then his foster mother, of course, becomes the first
Right.
member of the Sangha.
Of the
I mean,
Sangha bhikkhunis, yeah.
yeah.
Nuns.
And
And there's a whole story about that, which is also, one of these stories that's in various ways problematic. And there's a lot of questions about how much of it is historical and how much of it might have been rewritten by, later monastics who wanted to minimize the role of nuns in the Sangha. I mean, it's because in the story, Mahapajapati Gautami goes to the Buddha, what is it, 3 times, I think? 3 times, 4 times, asking him to ordain, and he says no. And finally it's Ananda who has to
right.
intervene.
Ananda intercedes.
Yeah, and sort of says, maybe they have a point.
Of course, Ananda had his own issues with women. I don't know about his mother's,
but again,
yeah.
we don't know if that's
Yeah.
real or if that's,
I know, it's so interesting, all this stuff.
people
Yeah.
slandering him after the fact,
Yeah.
because he was too
Yeah.
close to the nuns.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of, because I remember, I don't remember, Ajahn Suchito, who I've studied with a lot, and who, was sort of in the midst of all of that controversy, 10 years ago with the nuns in the forest tradition really revolting, in a sense, because of the patriarchy and the absurd kind of way some of these rules were being followed, like nothing was changing. But he was actually, really, from what I can tell, the nuns really loved him. He was their teacher. I mean, the nuns at the monastery where he was a resident, and they still, like, the ones that have left, still have such great respect for him. So it's obviously not a universal thing, but
Well, there's a definite split within the Sangha
for sure.
about some male monastics who are on the side of the nuns being ordained, and those that aren't. I mean, it's a pretty bright line.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with mothers themselves, because all these monastics have mothers.
Exactly, everybody has a mother.
Yeah, and
Every person on Earth.
Yeah, and so I think that, and then there's the whole question about, well, how did it really feel for Yasodhara to like be abandoned, which allegedly was, as it's told, was a sort of norm back then, that a lot of men would leave and become mendicants.
Yeah,
But was
once
it
again, really not stated in the early text.
right?
All of this stuff we take on later
Well, it's almost
accounts.
as though we're sort of apologizing for it in advance. You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah. I mean, there's many
yeah,
different reasons why it might not have been in the early text. Maybe it was the kind of thing that was
yeah,
a little bit something that should be apologized for. Although at that, I mean, we have to say that when Gautama left her, he was not enlightened. he
right,
was he
right.
was
He
a
was just
he was
seeking.
just a regular schmuck, trying to figure out what's going on in the world,
Yeah, yeah,
just like all of us.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, that is indeed a concern, a problem, because he left her alone with supposedly with their only child. I mean, interestingly, in the sort of early accounts of, I mean, I would say the earliest accounts of the Buddha's leaving, which is, I mean, one of the early suttas of the Majjhima Nikaya, I think it's 26. Uh, it's she's not mentioned at all. He said, the Buddha said, or the Buddha at the time says, when I left home, I cut off my hair and beard, and my parents were crying tears because of they didn't want me to leave. But there's no mention of a wife or a child. It's just the parents.
yeah. Fascinating.
So I mean, the whole thing. There's all these little
Yeah,
historical questions, which there could be any number of answers for, but nevertheless they're there.
mm. And do you know this? These 12 virtues of mother, the Matuguna.
No,
So this is from something called the Sonananda Jataka. It must be
oh,
from a
it's a
Jataka
Jataka
tale.
story. Okay.
Yeah. Mother is a divine with great merit. Mother is a fore-teacher. Mother deserves offering. Mother is a guardian god. Mother is a friend. Mother delivers you. Mother feeds you. Mother supports you. Mother takes care of you. Mother shows you good things. Mother makes you happy. Mother will secure. So those are 12
Mm,
virtues from one of the Jataka tales, which seem, I don't know about the guardian god, but maybe, you know.
yeah.
Um, and
Yeah, I mean, within a lay context, I think the Buddha was very, very supportive of mothers and motherhood. It's always this kind of, I mean, the whole idea of the family for somebody who is, um, you know, at the end of the day, pushing for a monastic lifestyle, is something that's fraught. It's fraught with
yeah,
dangers. The dangers being dukkha. I mean, specifically the dukkha of motherhood, of being a mother, of giving birth, of having children. I mean, having children I mean, I don't know from personal experience, but certainly from what I've seen is no walk in the park. And
yeah,
that's the danger. That's there's of course there's a draw. Um, there's stuff that makes us want to have children, but there's also the dangers involved in it.
here we are both speaking because neither of us have children.
Neither of us have children, so we're sort of speaking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but um, but having a niece and nephews, I sort of they're as close as I got,
right.
and it's fun to watch them at this point, succeed or struggle and all of that, and sort of be there for them as much as I can. But that's being a father figure, not a mother figure. So
Right.
that falls into my sister's realm, and uh, and and then there are of course some of the major female figures that appear later. One of whom was like right behind me,
Mm,
the mother of all Buddhas, the Prajnaparamita, which is again a kind of image, or Kuan Yin, who I always saw as sort of asexual, but um, uh, especially
has
because,
manifestations both as male and female, I think.
yeah, so there you go. And, but they aren't mothers. Well, I don't know. Maybe they are, but they're
I don't
mothers to
know.
us all, basically. They,
Yeah.
they, they can be mother figures to us all. Um, and, um, And I was wondering, because I can't remember, but this is your bailiwick, is the Mahamangala Sutta, where does it talk about, I know it talks about family, but does it talk about motherhood specifically?
Um, I don't bel I mean, as I recall, it's, I haven't looked at it in the last couple of months, but uh, I think it talks just about parents
Right.
together, like, that
Respecting them.
yeah, exactly, that one of the ways that we can find great fortune is through respecting and treating well our parents.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
But I do think there's something in terms of the quality of mothers, the qualities of a good mother. Um, and this is why I think that line in the Metta Sutta is so important, is that that quality is one that we all can aspire to, in a sense, is having that caring quality. I mean, it's, if we sort of see mothers as being the epitome of compassion,
Hmm.
then that is, um, that's the teaching right there. I mean, it's just like, um, we just have to remember.
Yeah, and it's also this uh, very difficult, sort of subtle distinction between that quality of metta and the quality of affection that leads to suffering that he's talking about in these sutras that I
Right,
mentioned earlier,
right.
where, if you get very attached, identified with your offspring, your children, your grandchildren, whatever it might be, the metta becomes something that in a Buddhist psychological sense goes from something that's universally useful and helpful and beneficial to something that's dangerous, because once we identify with our children the way basically all of us would,
Yeah,
um, uh, we can be very injured, hurt when they do things that aren't to our liking, or when they get injured or die in a way that the Buddha would consider, suffering. I mean, dukkha. I mean, that's the
sure, of
problem.
course. Yeah, I mean, it's right there.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, well, that's an interesting thing, right? So, unconditional love basically means the love is unconditional, whether the being dies or not.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the love is still there, even if somebody in your life has died. That's part of the unconditionality of it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and yet, of course, and then there's the fourth reflection, where basically everything that's near and dear will vanish,
Mm-hmm.
one way or the other. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and of course, I mean, I think the tragedy is generally when a child dies before his parents,
Exactly.
and that's where that attachment is most felt, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know any number of moms who have lost their kids, more than one of their kids actually,
Mm-hmm.
before they've died. And of course it's tragic, and that difference between feeling grief and attachment. I don't know that I would put, I wouldn't say grief is a form of attachment. I would say grief is just a form of love. um, when somebody you care about is lost, there is this love that, as I think Sharon Salzberg says, there's with no place to land.
Mm.
And so naturally grieving happens,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a process. And so whether it's a mother losing a child or a child losing a mother, you know um, one would, as part of our humanity, one would naturally experience that, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And then how it carries forth is, the not being able to let go is another matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. Grief is not really about letting go. It's about letting be, but be with sadness and be with that sadness as it arrives.
Well, and
and
also
dissipates. So
there's this uh, natural tendency, as I say, for identification
yeah,
that and one a very strong tendency that we all have is to identify with our family members, identify with our
of
parents,
course.
identify with our children. I don't know this personally again, but I've seen it in other people.
Hmm.
Um, and that's one danger. I mean, our children are not us. Our parents are not
Right.
us. And so, for example, our child may decide to do something that we don't particularly approve of or don't particularly care for.
Yeah.
Our significant others, you know, may
Yeah.
not
Of
do what
course.
we want them to.
Of course.
And this kind of identification that we naturally have as sentient beings with each other is part of the issue. And I mean, my guess would be that the identifications, between mother and child have to be very, very,
Yeah.
I would think would tend to be very, very close. Between father and child too, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Of course. Um, yeah. I mean, and it's great when the child does as you want the child to do. It's another matter when the child isn't. And like where is your role at that point, and when does it end, and does it ever end? And I think that really depends on the personalities involved. But I've seen certainly situations where adult children who are not. I mean, it's one thing to have a severe handicap in some way, and so your parents are going to take care of you as long as they can, and then
Mm,
make um, or your mother is going to, or where the child is just like not able to get out of a rut.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
and at what point do you say this is enough? You know, goodbye, or
yeah.
because they, but that's a whole other. I don't want to go there. This is Mother's Day we're talking about. That we're celebrating mothers and celebrating motherhood and celebrating
But I mean, motherhood is
those.
hard. I mean, this is one of the
Yeah,
ways that
of
motherhood
course.
are, in
Yeah, yeah,
is difficult. Is that there's often these kinds of we might call moral dilemmas involved in being a mother, being a parent, being
hmm,
having children, where there aren't necessarily uh, obvious right answers, or at least any right answer you choose is going to have some downside involved in it.
yep, yeah, for sure.
And I think that's I mean, it's all. I mean, of course, we can celebrate the happy times, which is probably what most of us are familiar with.
Yep,
The good times, the ways that our parents, our mothers, are helpful to us, or happy, or well, or
yeah,
enjoying their lives, and the way that they've supported their children and so on. And that's great. And the way their children should do what they can to support their mothers. Also important. But where the at least in where the rubber hits the road in the Dharma and the Buddha's eyes, really, I think is where where does the dukkha arise? Where are the dangers here? Where
yeah,
where does the where does motherhood become difficult, and how can we try to um, engage that with wisdom? I mean, of course, as we've said now several times, I mean, we're not mothers, so I'm not going to, you know, far be it for me to try to, tell mothers what to do. But
yeah. Although I've had plenty of mothers as students, you know,
yeah, yeah, and
and
to
teach and to some degree teachers.
sure, yeah,
So it's even though we are not ourselves mothers, we've certainly had our experience in one way or another,
hmm
but it's from the other side. Um, but yeah, um, when somebody's really struggling with their kids and they happen to be in an MBSR class, even, it's like, oh, okay. So how do you
yeah,
hold it? How do you
yeah,
work with it? How do you, can you, and a lot of it has to do with self-compassion,
hmm
you know,
yeah.
being able to take care of yourself even before your child, because otherwise you won't be there fully for your child in a sense.
Right.
And that's the challenge in many cases.
And also, I think another aspect of that is the way that so many of us identify with roles, and many, at least mothers in my experience,
Yeah.
have tended to identify with being a mother, identify with their own motherhood. And so it becomes very difficult, for example, when their children leave home, because in a sense, they sort of lose that part of themselves that they've identified with. They feel like they're less of a mother because the children are gone, are off out of the nest,
Oh,
right?
yes, of course, the empty nesters syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is one of the examples of where, a role can become a trap, can become, the way that we identify ourselves as being a certain role.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
you know,
of course. Yeah.
so
So, all you mothers out there, and you children of mothers, as all of us are,
hmm
enjoy a Mother's Day,
yeah.
uh, and celebrate those mothers around you.
And
And
may it be one without any dukkha at all.
good luck.
Yeah.
All right, friends, keep digging the Dharma.
Keep digging the Dharma.
We'll see you next week, I hope.
Yep. Thanks, John.
Take care.